My name is Susan Graves. I am 72 years old. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment in Asheville, North Carolina, and every morning when I wake up and make my own coffee, I say thank you out loud to no one in particular. Not because I'm religious, though I am, but because I remember what it felt like not to be allowed to make my own coffee. I need to tell you what happened to me, not because I want sympathy. I don't need that anymore. I'm telling you because I know there are women watching this right now who are living exactly what I lived, and I need you to know there is a way out. Let me take you back to October 2022. My husband, Gerald, died on a Wednesday. Heart attack. He was 74. We had been married 46 years, and I will tell you honestly, those 46 years were the best years of my life. Gerald was a good man. A quiet man, a man who fixed the broken step on our porch 3 times because he wanted it to be perfect. When he died, he took a lot of the sound out of the world. We had lived in our house in Greensboro, North Carolina for 31 years. 4 bedrooms, a yard, a garden I had been growing since 1995. Gerald's workshop in the back, where he spent every Saturday morning. It was a full house even when it was just the 2 of us. After Gerald passed, the house felt like it was pressing in on me. Too much space. Too many quiet rooms. Our son Floyd started calling every week. He lives in Charlotte, about an hour and a half away. He'd say, "Mom, you shouldn't be alone in that big house. Mom, what if something happens to you? Mom, we have the space. Just come stay with us a while." Floyd is my youngest. I have 2 children, Floyd, who is 47, and my daughter Patricia, who is 50 and lives in Denver. Floyd was always the one who called more. Patricia calls on Sundays, steady as a clock. But Floyd called in the middle of the week, asked about small things. I thought that meant he was attentive. I should have looked more carefully at who was making the invitation. Shirley is Floyd's wife. They married in 2014. She is 44, works in property management, and has a mother named Carol who lives 40 minutes outside Charlotte. Shirley and I were never close, but I told myself that was normal. Daughters-in-law and mothers-in-law don't always click right away. I gave it time. 8 years of time, actually. When Floyd suggested I move in, I asked Shirley directly. I called her myself. I said, "Shirley, I want to hear from you that this is something you actually want." She said, "Of course, Susan. Your family. We want you close." I sold my house in Greensboro. I sold Gerald's workbench, his tools, a riding mower, furniture that didn't fit the Charlotte layout. I netted $287,000 from the sale. I put $250,000 into a savings account and kept $37,000 liquid for what I thought would be my contribution to the household. Groceries, my share of utilities, my personal expenses. I moved in on October 14th, 2022, with 4 boxes of clothes, Gerald's photo albums, my KitchenAid mixer, my sewing basket, and my blood pressure medication. Floyd helped me carry boxes. He seemed happy. Shirley made tea. The guest room. My room was at the end of the hallway past the laundry room. It had 1 window that faced the side of the neighbor's fence. Small but clean. I set Gerald's photo on the nightstand, hung my robe on the back of the door, and told myself this was a new chapter. The first sign came at dinner that same night. Shirley had cooked grilled salmon, roasted asparagus, a nice wild rice. It smelled wonderful. I came to the table, and Shirley handed me a plate, smaller than Floyd's. Not dramatically, just smaller. Less salmon, no asparagus, just the rice and a dinner roll. I didn't say anything. I was a guest, in my mind. I was being polite. After dinner, Shirley mentioned that her mother Carol would be joining us for Sunday lunch that weekend. Carol was recently widowed herself. I understood. I said, "Of course, that'll be nice." What I didn't understand was that Carol would not just be coming for Sunday lunch. Carol would be coming every Sunday, then every Friday, then 3 days a week, then within 6 weeks of my moving in. Carol had her own spot at the table, her own mug in the cabinet, and her own drawer in the bathroom down the hall. I still had only one window facing a fence. By December 2022, 2 months in, I had started to understand the arrangement. There were, in effect, 2 households running inside that one house, and I was not in the good one. Let me be plain about what I mean, because I am not a woman who exaggerates. I raised 2 children, buried a husband, sold a home, and moved across a city at 72 years old. I don't have time for exaggeration. Carol, Shirley's mother, is 68 years old. She is fit, healthy, and has, as far as I can see, no medical conditions that require special food or special treatment. She is simply Shirley's mother, and Shirley loves her mother. I understand that. What I did not understand was why that love came entirely at my expense. Here is what a typical day looked like in that house. Shirley cooked most evenings. She is a competent cook, and I'll give her that. When Carol was there, which became most evenings, the table was set with the good plates, the blue and white ones from their wedding registry that normally lived in, the high cabinet, cloth napkins, sometimes a candle. The food was what I would call a real meal: pot roast, baked chicken thighs with herbs, homemade soup, pasta with sauce made from scratch. On the nights Carol wasn't there, which became rare, the meal was simpler. Frozen dinners some nights, sandwiches, a reheated something from earlier in the week. My portion on every night was the smallest at the table. Not outrageously, no one dumped scraps in front of me, but consistently, measurably less. I am a 72-year-old woman who weighs 138 pounds. I noticed when I was not full after dinner. The refrigerator was the clearest evidence. Carol had a shelf, an entire shelf, third from the top, stocked with her preferences. Greek yogurt, a specific brand. Good cheeses. The nice lunch meat from the deli counter, not the prepackaged kind. Fresh fruit. Her shelf was always restocked. I had the bottom drawer, shared with the vegetables. Inside, my blood pressure medication, a container of my leftover oatmeal from the morning, and whatever I had bought for myself at the grocery store that week. Yes, I had to buy my own groceries. Inside a house where my son lived. A house I was contributing $800 a month to, which Shirley said covered my share of food and utilities. Let me tell you what $800 was buying me. It was buying me breakfast. Oatmeal I made myself in the morning before anyone else was up because the kitchen felt like it belonged to Shirley between 7 and 9 a.m. and I had learned to stay out of it. It was buying me a sandwich at lunch, usually alone at the kitchen table with the television off because I didn't want to be in anyone's way. It was buying me a dinner that most nights left me still hungry. I started keeping crackers in my room. I am 72 years old. I kept crackers in my nightstand like I was hiding food from someone, which I was, though I couldn't admit that to myself yet. My doctor's appointment in January was the first real alarm bell. I had lost 11 pounds since October. My doctor, her name is Dr. Anita Patel, and she has been my physician for 12 years, looked at my chart, and then looked at me. She said, "Susan, are you eating enough?" I told her I thought so. She said, "Because your labs show you're slightly anemic, and 11 pounds in 3 months without trying to lose weight is something we need to take seriously at your age." I told her I had been under stress. I told her about Gerald, about moving, about adjusting. She nodded. She told me to eat more protein and to come back in 6 weeks. I went home and ate crackers in my room and did not tell anyone what the doctor said. Because who was I going to tell? Floyd came home from work at 6:30 every evening and sat with Shirley in the kitchen while she cooked and told him about her day. I was not part of that hour. Carol, on her visiting evenings, sat in the good armchair in the living room and watched her shows. I sat in the love seat by the window, the smaller one, the one with the wobbly left leg, and read my book. I told myself I was adjusting. That's what women my age do. We adjust. We make space. We accommodate. We have done it our whole lives. But here is what I know now that I didn't let myself know then. There is a difference between being flexible and being slowly erased, and I was being erased. I want to tell you about the day I stood in the kitchen at 11 o'clock at night. It was February 2023, 4 months into my stay. I had gone to bed at 9, as I usually did, because there wasn't much reason to stay up. The living room was Shirley and Floyd's space, and when Carol wasn't there, it was still their space. I had my room, my books, and my crackers. At 11, I woke up with my stomach actually hurting. Not just hungry, the kind of hungry that becomes a physical ache. I had eaten dinner, half a pork chop and some green beans, but it hadn't been enough. I lay there for 20 minutes telling myself not to go to the kitchen, not to make noise, not to be a bother. Then I thought about Gerald. Gerald used to say, "Susan, you're the least bother of anyone I've ever known, and somehow you always apologize for existing." He said it with love, but it was true then. It is still true. I got up. I put on my robe. I walked down the hall to the kitchen. I opened the refrigerator. Carol's shelf had leftover roasted chicken, a wheel of brie, sliced strawberries in a container. My drawer had my oatmeal from the morning and a half-empty container of cottage cheese. I stood there in the refrigerator light for a long moment. Then I took my cottage cheese, went back to my room, and sat on the edge of my bed in the dark, eating it with a spoon. I want you to sit with that image for a moment. A 72-year-old woman who sold her home, who contributed her money, who raised the man sleeping 30 feet away, sitting on the edge of her bed in the dark, eating cottage cheese at 11 o'clock at night because she didn't feel welcome in the kitchen. I cried that night. Not much, just a little. Enough to acknowledge to myself that something was very wrong. But here is where I need to be honest with you about something, because I think many women watching this will recognize it. I didn't name what was happening. I had all the information. I could see the 2 shelves. I could feel the weight I had lost. I could count the calories at dinner. I could notice how Floyd looked at his wife while I spoke and how he nodded without really listening and how the word mom had started to sound like a small obligation. But I would not let myself say, my son and his wife are treating me badly, because if I said that, I had to do something about it. And doing something about it meant conflict, and conflict meant Floyd might ask me to leave. And if Floyd asked me to leave, I had nowhere to go. I had sold my house. That is the trap. That is the thing I want every woman watching this to understand. When you sell your home and move in with your child, you are not just changing your address. You are changing your leverage. And if the people you are moving in with understand that, consciously or not, they will use it. I didn't understand this in October. By February, I did. I went back to Dr. Patel in March. I had lost another 4 pounds. Total, 15 pounds since October. She sat down across from me and folded her hands. She said, "Susan, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Are you being taken care of where you are living?" I opened my mouth to say yes, and something in me just stopped. I sat there for a moment. Then I said, "I don't think so, Anita. No, I don't think I am." She gave me a referral card for a social worker and a pamphlet about elder care resources in Mecklenburg County. She told me that what I was describing, the weight loss, the restricted food access, the social isolation in my own living situation, had a name. The pamphlet called it elder nutritional neglect. I had never heard that phrase in my life. I sat in the parking lot of that medical office and read it 3 times. Then I called my friend Annette back in Greensboro. Annette is 74, sharp as a tack, and has no patience for nonsense. I told her everything. The shelves, the meals, the crackers, the 15 pounds. I told her about Carol's wheel of brie and my oatmeal from the morning. Annette was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Susan, you need to document this." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "I mean, you need to see what's happening in that house when you're not in the room. My nephew put one of those little cameras in his house when he thought his housekeeper was going through his things. Small as a thumb. You can see everything." I said, "Annette, I'm not going to spy on my son." She said, "Susan Graves, your son is not feeding you. Call it what it is and do what needs doing." I drove home. I sat in my car in Floyd's driveway for 15 minutes. Then I went inside and started doing research on my phone. I want to say something before I continue. I did not want to do this. I am not a suspicious woman by nature. I trust people. I gave Shirley the benefit of the doubt for 5 months. I told myself stories about adjusting and being a gracious house guest and not overreacting. I do not place cameras in people's homes. That is not who I am. But I was losing weight, I was hungry, and nobody in that house was asking why. I ordered a small camera online. It arrived in a package that looked like an ordinary phone charger. I set it on the kitchen shelf between my old cookbooks facing the refrigerator and the counter. It recorded when it detected motion. It connected to my phone. I did this on a Thursday. Floyd was at work. Shirley was at her office. I set it up in 10 minutes, heart hammering the whole time, and then went back to my room and sat with Gerald's photo and said out loud, "I'm sorry, Gerald. I think I have to." No. The first 3 days of footage were ordinary. Shirley cooking, Floyd making coffee, Shirley packing Carol's lunch to take to her on Friday. Yes, packing a to-go bag of food for Carol, who was healthy and mobile and lived 40 minutes away. I noted that. I said nothing. The footage that mattered came on a Sunday evening in late March. Carol was there for dinner. I had been in my room. I often ate earlier on the nights Carol visited, telling myself I was tired, which was sometimes true and sometimes just a way to avoid the thing I couldn't name yet. On the footage, I watched Shirley plate the dinner. Baked salmon, twice baked potatoes, a green salad with croutons. It was a beautiful meal. She plated 4 dishes. Carol's had the largest portion of salmon and 2 potato halves. Floyd's was full. Shirley's was full. Mine, she slid to the back of the counter, had the smaller end piece of salmon, the part that dries out, and no potato, a roll, and some salad. Then she said something. She said to Floyd, loud enough for the camera to catch it clearly, "I only made enough potato for 3. Susan said she doesn't like them anyway. Floyd said, "Did she?" Shirley said, "She mentioned it a while back." I have eaten a twice-baked potato every Sunday of my adult life. Gerald made them every Easter. I have never, not once in 72 years, said I don't like potatoes. Floyd said okay and poured the wine. I watched that clip 4 times. She was lying. A small lie about a potato, but a deliberate one. A lie she told casually without hesitation to justify giving me less food. And Floyd accepted it without question, without thinking to ask me, without wondering, even briefly, whether his 72-year-old mother, who had lost 15 pounds, might want a potato on a Sunday evening. There is a word for the thing I felt in that moment. It wasn't anger. Anger came later. What I felt first was grief. Deep, quiet grief. Not about the potato, about my son, about who he had become, or perhaps who he had always been when I wasn't watching carefully enough. But that wasn't all I found. 3 days later, on a Wednesday afternoon, the camera caught Shirley and Carol sitting at the kitchen table. I was at my weekly Bible study at the church 6 blocks away. Shirley knew my schedule. They were having coffee, and what looked like a full spread. A bakery box open on the table, sliced cake, fresh fruit, the nice mugs that matched the good plates. Carol said, "How long do you think she'll stay?" Shirley said, "I don't know. As long as she needs to, I guess." Carol said, "The room would be better as a proper sitting room. You've always wanted one." Shirley said, "I know, but she sold her house, so it's not like she has somewhere to go." Carol said, "Has she mentioned touching that savings money? The house money?" Shirley paused. Then she said, "Not yet, but Floyd is working on it. Floyd is working on it." I watched that clip and sat very still for a long time. Floyd is working on it. I picked up my phone and I called my daughter Patricia. Before I called Patricia, I needed to check something. 3 weeks earlier, Floyd had come to my room and sat on the edge of my bed in a way that felt rehearsed. He said, "Mom, I've been thinking. You're spending money on little things, groceries, this and that, but you've got that savings sitting. They're doing nothing. I know a financial advisor who could help you structure it better." He mentioned moving some of it into a joint account, something he could manage, make sure it's protected. I told him I needed to think about it. He said, "It's just for your protection, Mom." I told him I'd let him know. I did not tell him that I had Gerald's cousin Raymond, who is a retired bank attorney in Raleigh, on speed dial. I called Raymond that same evening. He told me to lock down my accounts, set up alerts on every transaction, and not sign anything with Floyd's name on it without independent legal counsel. I did all of that quietly from my room while Shirley made dinner 40 feet away. Now, checking my accounts became something I did every morning with my coffee. Small, careful, deliberate. I knew every number. $250,000 in savings. $14,200 remaining in checking. All mine. All untouched. But then I started checking something else. When Gerald and I set up our finances, we had a joint credit card, a family card that we had used for household expenses. After Gerald died, I kept it open but barely used it. Floyd was listed as an authorized user, which we had done years ago for emergencies. I hadn't looked at that card statement in 4 months. I pulled it up on my phone. Floyd had made 43 charges on that card since November. The card I had barely touched in years. The card I had forgotten he still had access to. I went through every charge carefully, writing them down in my notebook with Gerald's old reading glasses on because the phone screen was small. Grocery runs, Carol's Greek yogurt brand, appeared on the receipt photos were available. A spa booking in February. One appointment, women's services, $180. A restaurant charge in January, the Fig Tree, a Charlotte restaurant I had never been to, $340 for what must have been a table for at least 4. A furniture charge at a home store, $640. The furniture charge I recognized. That was the new end table and lamp in the living room, the one by Carol's armchair. Total charges since November, $2,847. My card, my money, being spent on Shirley's household, Carol's comfort, and a spa afternoon I was not invited to and not told about. I photographed every statement page. I emailed them to Raymond. I called him at 8 a.m. the next morning. He said, "Susan, this is unauthorized use of your credit account. What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to know everything first. Then I'll know what to do." He said, "Call your daughter." I said, "I know. I'm going to." Before I called Patricia, I tried one more time with Floyd. I don't know why. Maybe because he is my child, and I raised him, and some part of me could not accept what I was watching without hearing it from him directly. Maybe because I wanted to be wrong. After 46 years of marriage to a good man, I had not yet fully learned that wanting someone to be better than they are does not make it so. I knocked on the bedroom door on a Tuesday evening when Shirley was at her book club. Floyd was watching television in the living room. I asked if I could sit down. He said sure, and turned the volume down but not off. I said, "Floyd, I need to talk to you about a few things." He said, "What's up?" I said, "I'm not eating enough." I know that sounds like a small thing, but I've lost 15 pounds since October, and my doctor is concerned. He looked at me. He said, "Mom, you've just been adjusting. It takes time." I said, "I have a camera in the kitchen. I've seen how the meals are plated." The television was still on in the background. He looked at it for a moment, then back at me. He said, "You put a camera in our kitchen?" I said, "I'm not sleeping well. I'm losing weight." I was trying to understand what was happening. He said, Mom, that's a violation of our privacy." I said, "Floyd, I am your mother and I am hungry in your house. I would like to talk about that." He stood up. He walked to the kitchen and I followed him. He opened the refrigerator. He said, "There's food here. Plenty of food." I pointed to my drawer. I pointed to Carol's shelf. I said, "Can you tell me why her shelf has brie and fresh strawberries, and mine has leftover oatmeal?" He closed the refrigerator. He said, "Shirley shops for what people eat. If you want something specific, you can ask." I said, "I have been asking Floyd for 5 months." He said, "You've mentioned things, Mom. That's different from sitting down and having a real conversation about it." I said, "I'm sitting down right now." He looked at his watch. He actually looked at his watch while I was talking to him. He said, "Look, I'll talk to Shirley. We'll make sure you have what you need. But putting a camera in our kitchen without telling us is something we're going to need to discuss." I said, "Floyd, I found $2,847 in charges on my credit card that I did not make. Charges you made. I'd like to discuss that too." The room went very quiet. He said, "Mom, that card was for household expenses. You said you wanted to contribute." I said, "I did not authorize $180 at a spa. I did not authorize dinner at the Fig Tree. I did not buy the lamp by Carol's armchair." He said, "Those were incidental things. We can talk about reimbursement." I said, "Floyd." He looked at me. I said, "Is this why you asked me to move in?" He didn't answer right away. In 47 years of knowing my son, I had never wanted so badly to be wrong about someone. He said, "Mom, I love you, but you're not being fair to Shirley. She works hard and she runs this household, and she's been very accommodating." I said, "Accommodating? That's the word you're using." He said, "I think you're stressed and grieving and you're not thinking clearly." And that was when I understood completely, because that is not what a son says to his mother when she shows him proof. That is what a man says when he has already decided his wife is right and his mother is the problem. That is the language of someone who has chosen. I went to my room. I sat on the edge of my bed. I picked up Gerald's photo. I said, "Okay, Gerald, I see it now." Then I called Patricia. Patricia answered on the second ring. She is 50 years old and lives in Denver, where she works as a hospital administrator. She has 3 kids, a busy schedule, and a voice that sounds like mine when I was her age. When she answered, I could hear her setting something down, moving to a quieter space, giving me her full attention. That is who Patricia is. I told her everything. I started with the food and the weight loss and Dr. Patel, then the camera footage, then the credit card, then the conversation with Floyd that night. I talked for almost 40 minutes. Patricia did not interrupt once. She asked a few questions, precise, practical questions. Did I still have access to my savings? Yes. Had I signed anything? No. Did I have the camera footage saved? Yes, on my phone and emailed to myself. Did I have the credit card statements? Yes, printed, and in my suitcase under my bed. When I finished, she said, Mom, I'm coming Thursday. I said, Patricia, you don't have to. She said, I'm coming Thursday. I'm booking the flight. Now, while we're on the phone, don't say anything to Floyd or Shirley before I get there. I said, okay. She said, Mom, I need you to listen to me. What you're describing is not small, and I need you to stop apologizing for it because I can hear you starting to apologize even now. I laughed a little because she was right. I had been about to say that I was probably overreacting. She landed Thursday evening. Floyd knew she was coming. I had told him Patricia wanted to visit, which was true, just not the full truth. He seemed slightly uneasy, but said nothing. Patricia came in with her carry-on bag, hugged me in the hallway, looked at my face, and said quietly, You've lost weight, Mom. I can see it. I said, 15 pounds since October. She squeezed my hand and said nothing else. Dinner that night was polite and tense. Shirley made chicken piccata. Carol was not there, thankfully. The plates were equal for once. I noticed that immediately. When Patricia is in the room, the performance changes. That told me everything I needed to know about whether the inequality was accidental. After dinner, Floyd and Shirley went to their room. Patricia and I sat at the kitchen table with the lights low and spread everything out. The camera footage on my phone, the credit card statements I had printed, the notes I had kept in my small notebook, dates, meals, what I ate, what I was served, what Carol's shelf had in it. 40 pages of quiet, careful documentation over 5 months. Patricia went through all of it without speaking. When she finished, she folded her hands the way she does when she is deciding something. She said, Mom, I want to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it. What has happened in this house is not a misunderstanding. It's not a personality conflict. This is neglect. And the credit card, that is financial exploitation. Both of those things have legal definitions, and both of them apply here. I said, Patricia, Floyd is your brother. She said, I know that, and I love my brother, but Floyd is going to answer for this. The next morning, Patricia asked Floyd and Shirley to sit down at the kitchen table. She was calm. She had always been calm under pressure. That's the administrator in her. She set the printed credit card statements on the table. She set a page of notes from the camera footage. She looked at both of them and said, We need to have a conversation about what has been happening in this house since my mother moved in. Shirley looked at the statements and then at Floyd. Floyd said, Patricia, this is between me and Mom. Patricia said, Mom called me. That makes it my business too. Shirley said, Susan put a hidden camera in our kitchen. That's a serious breach of trust. Patricia said, Shirley, my mother lost 15 pounds in 5 months living in your home. She was hungry. A hidden camera seems proportionate, don't you think? Shirley opened her mouth, closed it. Patricia went through every credit card charge, calmly, one at a time. The spa, the restaurant, the lamp. Floyd said some of them were small, some were a misunderstanding. He intended to pay it back. Patricia said, when he had no answer. Then Patricia pulled out her phone and played a clip from the camera footage. The clip of Carol asking, has she mentioned touching that savings money, the house money? And Shirley's voice, not yet. But Floyd is working on it. The kitchen was very quiet. Floyd looked at the table. Shirley said, that was taken out of context. Patricia said, the context is quite clear on the recording. Shirley, I sat at that table, and I watched my son not look at me. Not once during that entire conversation did Floyd look at my face. He looked at the table, at his hands, at Shirley at the window, but not at me, and that more than the food, more than the money, more than anything, that was what broke something in me permanently. Patricia had a return flight on Sunday. By Friday evening, We both knew I would be on it with her. I do not say that dramatically. It was simply the clearest conclusion. The house had been opened up and its contents examined, and what was inside was not something I could continue to live in. Friday morning, while Floyd was at work and Shirley was at a showing, Patricia helped me pack. 4 boxes in, 4 boxes out, minus Gerald's workbench, minus 31 years of house, but with everything that mattered, his photographs, my KitchenAid, my sewing basket, my blood pressure medication, my notebook with 40 pages of careful documentation, and my savings account entirely in my own name. We packed quietly and efficiently. My room took less than 2 hours to clear. That told me something. 5 months in a house, and my footprint was 2 hours. When you are not given space, you do not take up space. I had learned to be very, very small. At noon, I called Raymond and told him I was leaving. He said he would send a formal letter to Floyd regarding the unauthorized credit card charges, and that I had the right to pursue recovery of the funds. I told him to send the letter. He said it would go out Monday. Shirley came home at 2 in the afternoon. She walked in the front door and stopped in the hallway. My room door was open. The room was empty. She looked at me. She looked at Patricia. She said, "Susan, what's happening?" I said, "I'm leaving Shirley." She said, "You don't have to do this. We can work it out." I said, "I know I don't have to. I'm choosing to." She said, "Floyd is going to be upset." I said, "I know." She said, "Where are you going to go? You sold your house." And there it was. That sentence, said with concern on its face, but underneath, "You sold your house." The same sentence Carol had said on the camera footage. "You have nowhere to go." That was the plan. That had always been the plan. Keep Susan small. Keep Susan grateful. Keep Susan too afraid of having nowhere to go to ask any questions. I looked at Shirley for a long moment. I thought about what I wanted to say. I said, "I'm going to my daughter's home. Then I'm going to find my own place. Then I'm going to be fine. Shirley, I'm going to be completely fine." Floyd came home at 6:30. He walked in, and the house was different, quiet in a way he could feel. He came to the hallway. He saw Patricia's car keys on the table by the door, the 2 bags stacked near the entrance. He said, "Mom, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm leaving Floyd." He said, "You don't have to leave. We can fix this." I said, "We had 5 months to fix it, sweetheart." He said, "Mom." I said, "Floyd, I am your mother. I buried my husband, sold my home, and trusted you, and you let this happen. I don't know if you knew exactly how bad it was, or if you let yourself not know, but either way, you let it happen. And I cannot stay in a place where I am not safe." He said, "Safe? I would never hurt you." I said, "Floyd, I lost 15 pounds. I kept crackers in my nightstand. I stood in your kitchen at 11 o'clock at night eating cottage cheese in the dark because I didn't feel welcome to take food from a refrigerator I was paying for. That is not safe." His face did something complicated. I watched it happen. Something moved through him that might have been shame or might have been the beginning of shame, which is not the same thing. He said, "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was that bad." I said, "You didn't ask." I walked to the door. I picked up my bag. Patricia got the boxes. I turned around at the door and looked at my son, my youngest child, the one who had called every week, the one I thought was attentive. I said, "I love you, Floyd. I will always love you. But loving someone doesn't mean letting them treat you badly. I'm 72 years old, and it took me 5 months to remember that. I won't forget it again." I walked out. Patricia drove. I sat in the passenger seat with Gerald's photo on my lap. The Charlotte skyline moved past the window in the early evening light, and I did not cry. I had done my crying. I was done being small. That was 18 months ago. I am going to tell you what happened after, because I know that if you are watching this and you are living something like what I lived, the part you most need to hear is not the leaving. The leaving is important, but the after is the proof. I stayed with Patricia in Denver for 3 months. 3 months of being fed properly, sleeping without crackers in my nightstand, sitting at a table where people asked me questions and waited for the answers. I gained back 11 of the 15 pounds. Dr. Patel called it a full nutritional recovery. I called it eating enough food. Raymond sent the letter to Floyd regarding the credit card charges. Floyd repaid $2,200. All of it except for about $600 in disputed charges we agreed to let go. Not because I couldn't have pushed for it, but because I had already paid a higher price chasing what owed me, and I was done paying prices. In January 2024, I found an independent senior living apartment in Asheville. 2 bedrooms, full kitchen, a community of women my age, a garden plot that I now grow tomatoes, peppers, and marigolds in. I pay for it with my savings, which is entirely mine, which I protected because a retired bank attorney and a clear head and 40 pages of notes in a small notebook are powerful things when you use them right. The apartment has 3 windows. None of them face a fence. Patricia calls every Sunday, same as always. We talk longer now. When you've been through something together, there is more to say. Floyd called me in February. He said, "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about what you said." He paused for a long time. He said, "You were right. I let it happen. I didn't want to see it, and I let it happen." I said, "I know." He said, "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything." I said, "Floyd, I accept your apology. I love you, and I always will. But some things change a relationship permanently, not because either person wants them to, but because they have to. You understand?" He said, "Yes, I think so. We talk occasionally now. It is not the relationship I wanted or the one I thought we had, but it is honest, which is more than what I had before. Shirley and I have not spoken. Carol, as far as I know, still has her shelf in that refrigerator. I hope it brings her comfort. Now, let me tell you the things I want you to remember. The real lessons from everything I went through. When you move in with anyone, your child, a sibling, anyone, keep your finances completely separate. Do not add anyone to your accounts. Do not remove your own name from anything. If someone asks you to consolidate money into a joint account for your protection, consult an independent attorney before signing a single piece of paper. Elder financial exploitation is the fastest growing form of financial crime in this country, and the majority of it is committed by family members. Your love for your family is not a reason to be careless with your money. It is a reason to be more careful. Document everything. If you feel like something is wrong, write it down. Date, time, what was said, what you observed. A notebook in a drawer seems small. It is not small. My 40 pages of notes changed my story. Trust your body. I knew in December that something was wrong. My doctor knew in January. If you are losing weight, if you are not sleeping, if you feel like you are shrinking inside a house, believe your body. It is telling you something true. You have rights. In every state in this country, elder neglect and elder financial exploitation are illegal. There are agencies, your local area agency on aging adult protective services, your state's long-term care ombudsman that exist specifically to help you. You can call them without involving law enforcement if you aren't ready for that. You can call them anonymously. You can call them from a parking lot with your hands shaking. They will answer. And this one last thing, the most important thing, I want to say it plainly. You are not a burden for having needs. You are not difficult for wanting food. You are not dramatic for expecting to be treated with dignity in your own family. You do not need to earn your place at the table by shrinking. I raised a family, kept a home, buried a husband, and rebuilt my life twice. I kept crackers in my nightstand for 5 months because I had forgotten somewhere along the way that I deserved more than that. I will not forget again. If this story spoke to you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop your location in the comments. And if you are in a situation like mine right now, please reach out to your local area agency on aging. A simple search for area agency on aging plus your state will find it. They will help you find local resources. You are not alone. Thank you for watching.